Welcome to the Daughter Arise channel. My name is Yvonne and this channel is all about bringing you content about childhood sexual abuse. On this channel I share things to do with my experience of going through this childhood trauma. I also cover news stories and add my thoughts and commentary to them. And from time to time, when I'm fortunate enough, I do interview other survivors and their supporters in hopes of raising awareness of this childhood trauma. So if this is the type of content that you're looking for, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you can be notified of any new uploads. And if you do like the content, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. So today guys, this is the part 2 to a story I covered about Ryan, a male survivor who ended up going to the police about his stepdad. And in the last part 1, he was talking about his conflicting feelings because obviously he had an attachment to this man. He had been in his life from young and he had conflicting feelings about, going to the police, but knew he was doing the right thing. And I did part 1 and had to abruptly end the video. Well, the battery ran out. So today I'm back with a part 2 just to finish up on this story, and I will leave a link to it in the description box below. As with the other video, I will give a trigger warning here just because of the nature of the content. It is to do with sexual abuse. So if you do find this type of thing triggering or upsetting, I would advise you probably not to watch this at this time or come back at a later time when you feel up to watching it. But I'm just going to continue to read the story and just kind of share my thoughts on some of the things that he has shared. So in the last part of the video, he was talking about going to the police and them telling him to come back because they didn't have enough staff. And I finished that video by saying that that is something that was kind of common in terms of when survivors were going to the police. It wasn't really treated as a priority, them coming and disclosing past sexual abuse that has happened to them. So he said that after that he left the police station, and he said that if he would have gone back that day, he had no doubt he would have been murdered, because he said that his stepdad was in a state where he would want to protect himself over anything. And I knew how violent he was and how he didn't show any empathy for me as a young child throughout all the years. I knew he would be capable of that. When he went back to the police station after being told that there was no staff, he went back and kind of told them this is what it says here. So, the fact that he was such a kind of prominent figure in their local community, being a member of the church community and stuff, and having this high reputation, I have no doubt what Ryan says here, that he felt that if he would have gone back, he probably would have killed him to protect his reputation and to protect himself from being found out to be a paedophile. Luckily, the police officer understood the gravity of the situation and brought Ryan into a back room to make a statement. Ryan said he went through a 4-hour interview, which was quite traumatic because he had to relive all the abuse. This is what I was talking about in the last video. A lot of survivors don't want to go through that, and I don't blame them. When I went through it, after going through a physical examination at St Thomas's Hospital when I was 13, for them to do a physical examination to gather evidence of the sexual abuse that I went through, I then had to go and do an interview at a specialist police suite. And I've mentioned in other videos, it was set up in a way that was child friendly, with teddies and beanbags on the floor and a mic hanging from the ceiling and all that stuff. But nevertheless, it was a very draining and emotional experience for me. I had to tell in detail, as much as I could possibly manage at that time, what my dad was doing to me. I tried my best and stuff, but I found it awkward, I found it embarrassing, I found it very stressful, very traumatic. And I felt like that as a 13-year-old girl. And I can no doubt, imagine what Ryan must have gone through, sitting there for those 4 hours, having to go through all that. I hope he was given breaks. Even when speaking to some other survivors that I know that have gone through the police process, they have said the same thing, that they found it traumatic and emotionally draining. And it is very emotionally draining to have to relive the experience. It's to gather that evidence, to make an arrest, to hopefully be able to take that to court, the police be able to put in a case for it to go to court as well. But it is a very unpleasant experience. After that interview, the police arrested Andrew, his stepdad, in front of Ryan, in front of Ryan's mother, who found out in that moment about the sexual abuse allegations. Ryan claimed his mother never knew about the abuse and said if she knew, she would have stopped it from happening. He said, "I don't think she knew because she recognised that things weren't normal." There were certain instances where the abuse happened in the shower a lot, and she'd stand outside and she'd knock and go, "Is everything okay?" And it seems like there was some hint of maybe suspicion. It seems like Ryan's mother did suspect something but was not sure what it was that she suspected, especially if she had no kind of knowledge or understanding about childhood sexual abuse. She probably wouldn't have known the signs to look out for. But the fact that she said she recognised something wasn't normal but couldn't exactly recognise what it was means that she had a suspicion of something, but probably didn't want to act on it in case she may have got it wrong. But the fact that she was asking him if he was okay means that she was worried that something might have been happening to him in the shower because the stepdad was in there. Ryan said it never came to his mind to tell his mother about the abuse as a child because he didn't know what his stepfather was doing was anything wrong. He said, "I didn't know it was wrong, but I knew I was uncomfortable. I knew something was wrong when I was going through my abuse, but I didn't know exactly what was wrong. I didn't know it was sexual abuse. I didn't know, but something felt wrong." And when I've spoken to other survivors, this has been their kind of thing that they've said as well. "I knew something was wrong. It didn't feel right, but I wasn't sure what it was that was wrong." And people would say, "How do you not know it was wrong?" This is what I mean about a lot of people who haven't gone through childhood sexual abuse. They always are on the outside looking in, making their comments, giving their opinions. I mean, how hard is it to put yourself in the shoes of that adult who was then a child, having to face all these new scary and worrying feelings, having this thing happen to him and not understanding what it was? He said, "I was never told directly if someone was to touch your private parts or touch you in that area while they look at you, that was wrong. I never had any direct message." This type of information should come from schools, should come from, the government about childhood sexual abuse. This is something I mentioned in my book, Choose Life, which I published in January, 2019, about government-led child sexual abuse initiatives that really drive home to children and other adults that this is wrong. A lot of the time, this is left down to individual organisations. It's not really something that is talked about in schools. So it's something that is very, very difficult for a child to understand if they don't have that information. Ryan said, his dad said, "This is what dads do. Obviously, your dad's not been in your life, so you never had this before, but this is what dads do, but we keep it private. It's quite a private thing. It's like going to the toilet. What we just see here is just the manipulation of a paedophile." Obviously, he's made good use of the fact that Ryan didn't have his father in his life, and he's manipulated that information to make him feel like this is what a normal father does. Paedophiles will always try and manipulate information for their benefit so that they can, kind of make right what they're doing to the child, when in fact they're actually disgusting and wrong. Ryan said that the sexual abuse faded out when he was 13 years old, but he still had to live with the abuser and keep the secret or risk being beaten. Very difficult circumstance to be in. I've known survivors of childhood sexual abuse that even when the abuse stopped, they've had to live in the same house, continued to live in the same house as their abuser because they don't have the money to move out, they've got nowhere to go, this is their family, this is all they've known, and the mental and emotional strain of having to live in the same house as your childhood abuser is immense. From the people that I've spoken to who've had to be in those type of situations, it's been very, very difficult for them. Has caused problems with their mental health, depression, all kinds of things. They're having to play nice and act nice and keep up the pretense in the same house because they've got nowhere else to go. He said, "After I escaped the abuse, I was 16 and the 3 months following was kind of a weird patch. But after that, I really went into deep depression and I starved myself. I developed a bit of an eating disorder where I'd punish myself and I wouldn't eat because I felt like I didn't deserve it. I ended up in hospital and I know I was trying to take my own life. Those are just some of the things, you know, that childhood sexual abuse survivors go through. You know, it's something that a lot of adult survivors struggle with later on in life, you know, feeling like they don't deserve to be loved, don't deserve anything good because of how the abuse has made them feel. And, you know, depression and eating disorders, addictions, all kind of different things can show up in trauma, in somebody who's gone through childhood sexual abuse, in their trauma and their way of coping with what has happened to them. A year before Andrew was arrested for abusing Ryan, the now 22-year-old recalled police visiting the house over separate allegations that Andrew's step-grandchild had made about him. When officers arrived, they asked Ryan if Andrew had ever abused him, at which point Ryan lied to protect his stepfather. Again, this is something I've mentioned on other videos. Those that sexually abuse children, paedophiles, they rarely do it to one child. But what they're very good at doing is isolating that one child and, you know, making them feel like they're the only one that they're doing it to, or keeping their kind of trail separate. I have supported people on cases where they've gone to the police and reported their abuse, and then during the course of the police investigations, they've come to find out that there's other allegations or other kind of crimes that have been committed against other children. Police later told Ryan that a teenage boy who used to babysit for Andrew made a report to the police to say that Andrew had sexually abused him. However, the report went missing and they never followed it up. Tragically, the boy ended up taking his own life. This is absolutely terrible. Really it is. You know, so already we've seen that this stepdad has had three victims. You know, 3 male victims, and one of them has ended up taking their life. And some survivors of childhood sexual abuse do end up taking their life, and it's so sad. So sad. This man deserves prison. Ryan revealed that part of his motivation was to speak out was because the teenage boy who took his own life didn't get the opportunity to. He went on to say that when Andrew found out the young boy had taken his life, he celebrated because he didn't want to go to court. Now, do you see what I mean about paedophiles never being sorry for their actions and sorry for the things that they do? They're only sorry when they, you know, get caught, and even then they're not really sorry. They will try and blame the victim. But do you see how cruel and nasty this man is? Yet he claimed to be somebody of God and claimed to be in the church. Absolutely terrible. He went on to say that Andrew was charged with sexual abuse against him, but his abuser died by suicide before he could be brought to justice. Well, he's facing justice now, isn't he? Because he's going to have to justify to God all the evil that he has done. And justice may not have happened in the way that Ryan had hoped, but obviously this guy didn't want to face the justice of this land, so he will have to stand before God and be accountable for the things that he's done against these children and the things that he's done to make that young boy take his own life. Yeah, of course he didn't want to face the embarrassment and humiliation of having to be paraded before his local community, his local area, his church, about his allegations, about the things that he's been charged with. Some will say it's an easy way out, but I don't think he's got an easy way out because, as I said, he will have to stand before God for his actions. But obviously Ryan won't get to have his day in court, which probably might have been part of his process of healing, to have seen him go through that, and probably would have loosened him from some of the fear and other feelings that he felt along the way because of what this man had done to him. He recalled the moment where he was told about, you know, his stepdad taking his own life, and Ryan commented that he was a narcissist and didn't believe that he would do that. But he, on the other hand, he felt that, you know, the fact that he did this, maybe it was his way of trying to regain control of the situation. And we know that with paedophiles, it's not necessarily about the sexual acts for them, it's about their need to control the child. As I finish this video, I'm really pleased that Ryan has been able to find some healing in being able to share his story, because he has now made it his thing to try and help survivors who have had similar experiences. You know, he also now runs a charity called Prevention Pathways, which provides in-school educational support to children who've experienced trauma. I think out of it, like myself, you know, he's been able to find some sense of empowerment and purpose. And I know for him, you know, it's cost him a lot to get here, but I'm so glad that he is still here, unlike the young man who took his own life. It's a tragic story all around, and I hope that in him sharing his story, especially as a young male, a young man, he will be able to encourage other young boys to come forward and share their stories. So guys, that is it for this video. I will leave a link to the story in the description box below, and I will see you on the next video. Take care.